Hello, everyone. Welcome to another insightful episode of Lesotho's Investment Case podcast. My name is Potso Sebele and I'm your host. Today we have a very special guest by the name of Tente. Tente is the Chief Executive Officer of Lesotho Highlands Development Authority, LHDA in short. Tente, a very warm welcome to you Tente on our show. We are deeply grateful for honoring our guest, our invite, and squeezing us in your what I believe must be one of the busiest schedules. We thank you for that, and we are looking forward to an insightful conversation.
Thank you, Ndadesivili, and thanks for the opportunity. I wouldn't miss it for the world. Thank you.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Now, Tente, as I highlighted in my opening remarks, is currently the Chief Executive Officer at LHDA. So Tente, a lot of times people see the outcome. So they see Tente now as the CEO. What we don't know or appreciate in a lot of times is the backstory. How did we get here? Maybe it's a good starting point to go back and take us and our audience on that journey, on that educational and professional journey from I don't know where you studied, where you first worked formally. Walk us through that journey so that we appreciate how we have now that Tente heading one of the largest construction projects on the African continent.
Thank you, Ndadesivili. How far back do you want me to go?
Maybe let's just start.
We can work it out from the beard here that I'm quite a veteran now. So, yeah, maybe I was born and bred in the country here, in the district of Berea, a small village called Ghana. I did my primary and high school there. And from there on, I joined the University of Lesotho, the National University of Lesotho. To be honest, my original plan was really not to do the 4-year degree. I did the BSc at NAL. The plan was immediately after 2 years, I would be at the same level as they used to be called grade A's at that point in time. Then I would go and do engineering outside the country because at the time we didn't have universities offering engineering degrees. After completion of 2 years, I did my applications in the UK. I was admitted. Unfortunately, the scholarship thing did not work out quick enough. So I continued and did my 3rd year. And when I completed the 3rd year, the scholarship was now ripe and ready for me to go. And I had just begun my 4th year. So I had that difficult choice of saying, do I complete the degree and forfeit the scholarship, or do I leave? And I took the latter. I then left for the UK. And during the holidays, when I came back doing the 1st year degree, 4-year degree in Loughborough University, when I came back here, my former colleagues were now graduating and I was the 1st year. I could actually feel the pinch a bit to say, Did I make a right decision or what? Yes, but I continued and finished my first degree at Loughborough and did my master's at Surrey University, where I specialized in structural engineering. My first degree was civil engineering, so I did structures, dams, bridges, buildings, high-rise buildings. That is my specialty. I then came back because the scholarship was facilitated by LHDA. I came back to join the LHDA. I was a young professional or an intern at Mohale Dam. When I came back, the design of Mohale Dam had just started, so I had that opportunity to join the design team right at the beginning, during the tender process, as well as when construction started, then moved up to Mohale. So I was part of the supervision team, the engineers supervising the works there. I worked my way up, started first as an inspector of works, then section engineer, and eventually I was the resident engineer of the impoundment works when the dam was being filled up. That was about 2001, then going towards 2003, when the construction work was coming to an end. And now we started looking around for opportunities, and a sister company of LHDA, which is TCTA, doing similar work in South Africa. There were some opportunities that opened up there. I joined TCTA building a similar dam in Cape Town. Then I was in Cape Town for about 5 to 6 years. Another dam opportunity came up, still with TCTA in KZN. Spring Grove Dam. Just when we started filling up the dam, that dam in KZN, phase 2 was now starting in NSTA in Lesotho. So I decided to come back into Lesotho to rejoin the LHDA now as the divisional manager for phase 2. Luckily, I made it through the interview and I worked as the divisional manager from 2013 up until 2019, when the chief executive opportunity presented itself. Once again, I was lucky enough to be appointed as the chief executive. That's a more than 40-year journey in how many minutes? In 5 minutes or so.
Incredible,
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah.
Two quick things I wanna touch on in your opening statement there. And the first one is, and this especially goes to us, the young professionals of the current time. We tend to look for instant validation, to be to occupy any office of significance and contribute positively to any economic growth. It takes time. You have pretty much been part of LHDA for well close to 3 decades, if I understand. And as you pointed out, you started from the very bottom.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Second point I want to touch on is, so on this show, we speak to a lot of corporate executives and leaders of key institutions. Not many of them have a a STEM background. So you're scientists, you're technologists, and engineers. Not all of them, and not many of them have that background. And I think it's interesting and fascinating to have this discussion around, and this could be an advice to young professionals out there, or even young kids who are about to enroll for higher institutions. What would you say is the significance of, or the significance that the STEM category of programs plays in the development of the country, in the economic impact of the country? Because a lot of times we see, like I said, leaders and C-suite executives being from, your social sciences, but as a developing country, where you'd argue strongly that we need to be investing heavily on infrastructure projects that need design, engineering, design and structural buildings. Just look at our capital city. The state of our infrastructure is underwhelming, to say the least.
Yeah.
What did you say to the coming generation about pursuing those engineering courses, scientific courses, technological courses, in order to have an important role to play in advancing our economy?
Yeah, that's a very good question. In actual fact, the scientific education has an advantage of where you are able to diverse, not necessarily for you have that ability. If you have been certified as a social scientist or an environmental scientist or an engineer for that matter, it's because you are trainable and you have that advantage of going into different spheres of career. For example, I know a lot of engineers that have shifted from the actual pure engineering science, but shifted towards doing the MBAs and the likes, and end up heading very high institutions, or even being players in the economic type fraternity. So for me, I would say to the young professionals or the young guys that are still starting their career to say, yes, have a bit of focus on what you want, but have an open mind. The world today is quite diverse. Opportunities don't come in straightforward, normal careers that we used to have when we were youngsters growing up. As you venture into that, then there are more opportunities opening up. So for me, I wouldn't want the youngsters. That's also what I tell my kids. Try several things, find your tune, and then only then you can specialize with what you're good at. But don't tell yourself, I'm going to be a lawyer and nothing else, when there are opportunities that you could still do as a lawyer, play a bit of IT, play a bit of that. So today's world requires somebody with open mind that can tackle a number of things. And even the employers of today require somebody that would be able to feature in a number of disciplines, as opposed to when you are employed as an engineer, you're just going to do engineering, nothing else. For example, where I'm trained as an engineer, but eventually I'm playing more as a as a project manager or as an engineering manager, as people's manager, I'm dealing with environmental issues, I'm dealing with social issues. So I can't just say I only did civil engineering, which is known to be just cement and mortar and sand. So, yeah.
Perfect. I think that leads us perfectly to my next question, which is now about LHDA, the institution. So that didn't. The theme of our show here is we focus and promote the positive economic stories about Lesotho happening in and around Lesotho.
Mm-hmm.
And the story of LHDA ticks all the boxes. It's a massive opportunity for Lesotho, but not only on the economic front, also on environmental impact, socio-economic environment. We're gonna deep dive into that. But before we get into all of that, maybe let's give our audience a little history lesson here about the beginnings of LHDA. Can you remind, or for those who would not even know, our audience about what LHDA is, how it was started, what are its objectives? And I know there's phase one that was completed 2002, 2004. We are now busy with phase two. Maybe just remind our audience what LHDA is and what it's aimed to pursue.
Yeah, the misconception that we often fall for is to assume LHDA is all about building dams and transferring water to South Africa and generating power for Lesotho. That's often how many people explain LHDA to be. But the story of the LHDA stems back from even the 1930s. That's when the two countries, South Africa and Lesotho, started the engagement. The issue really was to find ways of generating the economy and improving the lives of the people of the two countries. As the mines were growing big in South Africa, unfortunately, Gauteng that's where most of the water is going. You know, Gauteng is one of the towns that's built in an area where there is no abundance of water. But if you look many towns across the world, the first thing that's get done before you decide where your town is going to be is to look for water. But Gauteng was different. That's where gold was. People were looking for gold. So the gold was the driver, but then there was scarcity of water. Now South Africa was looking for ways of getting water into Gauteng. And Lesotho, where we located now, there's abundance of rain. During summer, our rivers flow. And if you look at all the rivers, they flow towards the south, and they all flow into the Senqu River. The same river runs into South Africa and becomes the Orange River. South Africa had the opportunity to block the water there and then build a pipeline from Alwal North that goes all the way to Gauteng to supply the water there. That scheme used to be known as the Orange Vaal Transfer Scheme, OVTS. But then looking at that scheme, comparing it to Lesotho Highlands Water Project, where the dams can be built within Lesotho at a higher ground and the water mostly just gravitates, redirected through tunnels, and then the water gravitates towards South Africa. That's how the Lesotho Highlands Water Project was born. But it wasn't born out of the engineers just on their own deciding, let's go and build the dam there, let's go and do this. It was born out of the two governments looking for ways of stimulating the economy for the people of the two countries, making sure that there is good neighborly relations, as well as ensuring that that there is peace and prosperity. All what I'm saying is well captured in the treaty preamble, and that's where the mandate of the LHDA comes from. The fact that as engineers we came about to say, for the two governments to realize these aspirations, then we'll have to do the infrastructure development that you're seeing in Lesotho. It's more by coincidence than anything. The idea really came from the two governments. So we often sometimes call it a double coincidence of needs, because South Africa was looking for water. Lesotho was looking for ways of generating revenue for itself and being self-sufficient or independent in power generation. So as the treaty was negotiated, then it was agreed that as we are harnessing these waters in Lesotho and diverting them through the tunnels, then Lesotho should be allowed to use that system to generate power for itself. Pretty much that's how the LHDA came into being. Then government of Lesotho had to establish a body that will implement this project within the boundaries of Lesotho. And South Africa did the same with the infrastructure that would be developed on the other side, which is the TCTA, that used to be known as Trans-Caledon Tunnel Authority, because they were responsible for the tunnel that was crossing the Caledon River.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Now, as you nicely put it, the mandate or responsibility of LHDA now is to implement and see and oversee the operations mm-hmm. and maintenance mm-hmm. of this big infrastructure project. But as you highlighted, it has far-reaching economic potential or impact, mm-hmm. as well as the environment and the social aspect of it. Let's delve into each of those. Maybe let's start with the economic side of it. What is the economic potential? You can even go back to phase 1 and even go to phase 2. I know it's projected to complete around 2029. Mm-hmm. What has been the economic benefits that have yielded from this project? Maybe speak to Lesotho, because a different organization will speak about the benefits to South Africa.
Yeah. Looking at it from the economic benefit point of view, the mere fact that the project is happening within the boundaries of Lesotho meant that there are going to be job opportunities. I'm talking phase 1. There were job opportunities created during phase 1. People worked. There were opportunities for skills development and skills transfer. And I often joke about myself to say I am the product of phase 1, and there are many of us If you look at many people working in the leadership of the LHDA are actually products of the phase one program. But over and above that, Lesotho now had the opportunity to export skills, because looking at myself, I had to go outside and work in Cape Town. There were others that joined me there, others. So I don't know how many products of the Lesotho Highlands Water Project that are working in South Africa. I remember even 2010, when the 2010 stadia were being constructed, a lot of people went to South Africa. Others went even beyond the borders of the SADC countries. I know people that used to work for the contractor here, and as the contractors were picking up and having other job opportunities either in Europe or somewhere in the Middle East, I had my two colleagues going to Libya and staying there for a while. I had other people who were working for the contractor. They joined the contractor, had won a tender building another dam in Iceland. So that is from the employment and job opportunities point of view. The construction works that people gaining money from working on the project, now they were able to spend. So the actual spin-offs coming out of the construction program was another massive improvement to the economy of Lesotho. The World Bank, back in, I think it was towards the end of phase one implementation, they did a study to say what was together with the Central Bank of Lesotho. I wouldn't be able to quote the statistics perfectly myself as to how the impact on the economy of the country, but you can actually see the trends on their graphs of before, during, and after phase one. And the same study, I got it wrong. The study was done just before even phase two started. And from that, they could also project where they see phase two actually lifting the economy of Lesotho once it gets rolling and the actual implementation is running. So we are already there. That's looking at it from the economy point of view. Looking at it from the environment point of view, because we are in the water business, we need to make sure that we maximize access to this natural commodity that's coming through. And our weather patterns are such that it only rains within a certain period of the year. That means the mere fact that our rivers continue running even in winter, then there must be something happening to that water before it gets to the river systems. That's where the wetlands come in. They absorb this water and they naturally sift the impurities out of this water and slowly release this water back into the environment. That's why you will see our rivers continue to flow over and over. Yes, when it's raining, you'll see that surface water, muddy water flowing right through. But over a longer period, the water that has gone through the sifting system of the wetlands now finds its way. And so this is one area that as a project we want to put our efforts in to say We need to look after the environment. We need to restore these wetlands that are becoming degraded. We need to raise awareness with the chiefs and the communities out there about the importance of these wetlands, because those are now acting as natural dams. They actually, if our environmental scientists, you speak to them, they can tell you if it's a wetland of this size, of depth of this size, there's so much water in it. So that means those are natural dams. So we just bake in those natural dams with our engineered artificial dams. Then that is from the environment point of view. Now coming to the people. Our mandate stems from the improvement of the lives of the people of this country. And this is an area that our new strategy is also heavily trying to address, in that if you look at phase 1, we've got all sorts of accolades in terms of engineering masterpieces, how we did the hydropower station and everything else. But there is very little that comes into the improvement of the lives of the people. So not that we didn't do anything. We have done a lot, but it's an area that we haven't been out to tell our story about. So it's an area that we're going to focus a lot on, to say, this is the story of the LHDA. This is how it connects to the original mandate that comes out of the preamble of the treaty. In actual fact, I will implore all your viewers or listeners to, even if they don't read the whole of the treaty, if they can read that preamble, then they will get to understand the mandate of the LHDA and our sister companies from the other side.
Fascinating indeed. And nice perspective there about wetlands and how they naturally provide water. And so these 3 spheres or spheres of economic, environment, and social, they're interlinked.
Absolutely.
One cannot happen without the others.
One cannot happen without the other.
And before we also touched a bit on the revised 10-year strategy. But before we get into that, maybe let's double click on the economic impact of this Lesotho Highlands Water Project. I think I read somewhere, must be on the LHD website, but this is an outdated stat. It's a long time ago that I think it was around 2000, 2003 that the LHDA works contributed around 5.4% to Lesotho GDP at the time. The figures obviously have changed by now. But I want us to go a step further and make our audience understand how LHDA in its current form generate revenue, because I know there's water royalties. There's also a component of revenue from the sale of electricity to LEC. Just paint a picture of how now LHD makes money, so that it goes full cycle. For LHD to now incorporate the environmental impact, the social aspect, they have to be funded from somewhere.
A very good question. Another misconception that we often encounter is that we're selling water to South Africa. We're not doing that. I spoke about the OVTS and the LHWP. Building the OVTS in South Africa. South Africa would do that in 2 phases, and then would be able to transfer that 70 cubic meters per second of water to Gauteng. Where the LHWP beat the OVTS, it came out cheaper and it could be done in phases. That's why we had phase 1A, phase 1B, there was phase 2, phase 3, and phase 4. The mere fact that you can do it in phases, it means you can defer your capital expenditure. And by deferring your capital expenditure, then you have opportunity to invest that money or do something else with it whilst you're completing phase 1. And as your demand increases, then you go and do phase 1B. As your demand increases, then you go and do phase 2, phase 3. Then that was one of the benefits. Now, the two countries decided LHWP is cheaper, OVTS would cost this much because they would have to build it in 2 phases and then invest a lot of money, store a lot of water that's not required at the time. Now they decided that this benefit that we gaining by developing this project in Lesotho, we're gonna share it. That's now what we call royalties. And the way it's being shared, Lesotho is getting 56%, South Africa is getting 44%. I understand it was supposed to be 50-50. I haven't really gotten to understand fully why Lesotho eventually got the 6%. But what we are often told, I haven't seen it written anywhere else, but what we often told was Lesotho was saying, now you've built all these roads, all this infrastructure going up the mountains. It wasn't really in our plans. How are we going to maintain it? Then there was agreement that, okay, here is 6% for you to maintain it. Mm-hmm. Now Lesotho is gaining royalties. And if I remember correctly, because we do it in calendar years, in 2022, we were able to add to the fiscus 1.3 billion. And in this year, we are projecting 1.6 billion. That is just from the water royalties. We now have the Muela power station that is generating power for Lesotho. And the sales of electricity to LEC from Muela, that also adds to the government coffers. Many people assume when we say we generated 1.3 billion, it has come to LHDA. No, it goes straight to the government coffers, and we go and back just like everybody else. And we often don't get what we've asked for. Muela currently is when we did the numbers maybe two years ago, it was supplying 51% of the Lesotho needs in terms of energy. And when you compare that 51% in terms of, we've made a huge difference in terms of the money that could have gone outside. I know we are currently squealing and complaining that we are not charging LEC a cost-free reflective tariff, because then what we're charging currently is not able to sustain us. And so, yeah, it is a debate for another day, because now we're subsidizing just about everybody else. It is for the government to decide how they go forward with that.
Interesting. Just double click on the power generation, the electricity component of it. I think the more relevant and applicable question is now currently, is there a commercial opportunity for Lesotho to be thinking of obviously being energy sufficient and an opportunity to export the excess that we may generate in terms of a bigger debate around renewable energy sources and alternatives? Is there, from your feasibility studies, because I understand that even for phase 2, there have been some feasibility studies in terms of what could be the opportunity to play around that as enhancing the power generation. Do you think there's an opportunity there for Lesotho to increase the energy generation capacity so that we even have access to export?
Yeah, I know this is an aspiration of the government of Lesotho, and our minister is very vocal about it. Yes, it's a resounding yes. I believe there is potential for Lesotho to be self-sufficient 100% and then be able to export excess to the Southern African power pool. But what I've always said, baby steps. Our immediate goal is actually to be self-sufficient. And if we use possible energy mixes that are available in terms of green power generation, yes, we can do more hydro. We are currently in the throes of starting the design for Oxbow scheme. That will add more power to Lesotho. Even before I go into Oxbow, phase 2, Pudihadi Dam, before you even do anything to any machines, to anything, by just increasing the volume of water that will be transferred from Pudihadi into Katse and then be able to go to South Africa, we can increase our generation per year by almost 60%. Yeah. Currently, we generating what is often referred to about 470 gigawatts per annum, 470. But once you bring in Pudihadi, it will add another almost 60%. Then we're going to have Oxbow. Oxbow is going to add another 200 gigawatt. We are looking into also having solar. I know there is Ramarotole coming on. There is Ramarotole too. So the energy mix that we're having, we can in the near future see, based on these projects that are around already, we can already see that Lesotho will be self-sufficient, and whatever excess coming out of that can be exported to our neighboring countries. So there will be other projects that we will further be studying. I know there is a lot of talk about Kobong. Kobong, because of the type of scheme it is, when we did the study a few years ago, we found it wasn't economically feasible because of the prevailing situation at the time. Even now, personally, I still don't believe it's possible to go ahead with Kobong. But as more information comes to the fore, and the landscape around this thing changes, who knows? We might find that Kobong is also in the running.
But the positive takeaway here is there's definitely
Definitely.
commercial opportunity for Lesotho to explore
Yeah.
those renewable energy sources.
Yeah.
Perfect. And earlier you mentioned that the social economic implications of LHDA are the areas or one area that hasn't gotten enough attention or on air. Maybe let's dig deep into that. What are some of the social programs that you have, maybe that have been running from phase one, maybe even those that you are planning for phase two?
One of them is tourism. We've had Castle Lodge for how long? We've had Mohale Lodge. We have a Dikile Lodge that's not operational. And these are the lodges that were built by the project. And if you go again into the treaty and you look at, is it article, it's either 4 or 5. It's 4, article 4. 4.1 talks about transfer of water using that system to generate power. Article 4.2 talks about ancillary developments. And when you talk in there, examples are made. There's irrigation. And it's an area that you don't see LHDA playing, but it's part of what we need to be doing. Well, it's supposed to be funded by the country in which it's done, but we need to be deliberate and play a role in irrigation. It talks about supply of potable water. It's an area that we are not fully exploring. And our strategy is now focusing on those areas. It talks about opportunities for energy generation. That's why I'm saying we're talking about solar, we're talking about mini hydros, we're talking about, we no longer just talking Oxbow and Muela. We're talking about all other opportunities that we can use to generate electricity for Lesotho. So these floating solars that we're going to put on our dams are going to generate more electricity. Now there is also a tourism aspect, and we are saying we have been getting a management contracts for somebody to come and run these lodges, and we actually end up paying those people to run the lodges. But right now we're saying we want investors to come. We want investors to come and partner with LHDA. So as the Minister of Finance is urging everybody to find ways of alternative means of revenue, we are also playing a part in there. That is really the shift in the focus of our strategy. It has 5 strategic goals. The first one being we implement and operate and maintain the existing. So what we're doing, we want to complete phase 2. We want to start to advise our principal to start the dialogue on phase 3, that's the implementation part. We want to continue operation and maintenance with the operation and maintenance of the existing system. That's goal number 1. Goal number 2 has to do with protection of the environment. This environment that's giving us the water, we want to make sure that it is sustainable. We want to protect the wetlands. We want to ensure that we manage the catchment. We want to make sure that the physical environment is in a state that it can continue to supply us with water. The third one is livelihood improvement of the people. So we want to be deliberate about, we don't just stop at compensation. We will compensate those that we've affected their properties, but we want to make sure that their lives have improved. And that this now talks again directly to the treaty preamble. We have to be deliberate by ensuring that we improve the lives of the people. The fourth one is maximization of commercial opportunities. I've already spoken about tourism, I've spoken about irrigation, I've spoken about many other things. But the ecotourism part, we want to make sure that people who come and visit these dams, that's why we have the tourism master plan. Somebody climbing up Sunny comes to Pudihadi to see Pudihadi Dam, already say, I'm already here. I might as well go to Katse. What's happening at Katse? There must be activities at Katse that will make people stay for a while. While sit at Katse, I've already seen these two dams. Why not get to Mohale? Definitely you have somebody spending a couple of nights in the country. And when they are spending a couple of nights in the country, then they will leave something. That's number 4. Number 5. All of this will not happen without number 5. Our number 5 is management capacity as well as good governance. If there's anything that can derail anything, including this project, it's corruption. So we want to make sure that we have the capacity to implement all these nice things that we say we're going to do, and we have good governance to make sure that whatever we do, there is transparency, there is cost effectiveness, and there is participation for all. So that's really, in the nutshell, what our 10-year strategy is about.
Fascinating. Maybe just to conclude around the strategy, what are some of the learnings and lessons that we took away from phase 1, and maybe what role or how has our thinking into implementing this strategic goals that you highlighted for the phase 2? What has been some of those learnings from phase 1 that you're going to be implementing into achieving this 5 strategic goals that you just highlighted?
I think some of the learnings that we coming from phase 1 and including a bit of phase 2 that we've done, there is a lot of criticism on LHDA on the fact that we have this massive sea of water and people don't have access to that water. So whilst we're talking about implementing, operating and maintaining the infrastructure, in actual fact, that goal says we should have inclusive access to water and electricity. So we've tended around a bit to say it's no longer about operating and maintaining the system. It's actually about making sure that there is inclusive access of water. So whilst in phase 1, maybe we had what we called water and sanitation projects, where we're trying to make sure that communities surrounding the dam have access to water. And we're trying to draw this water from the natural wells up in the mountain there. And they dry up quickly, obviously. So we're saying we have engineers who are operating and maintaining this reservoir. There's water in the reservoir. Why don't we take this water from the reservoir, pump it up to a higher elevation, clean it up, and distribute it to these communities? That's part of the potable water that's under Article 4.2 of ancillary development. That's one lesson that we've learned from phase one. Another aspect I've already spoken about, to say, issues of ecotourism. There are many spin-offs that can come from the project that we are not at this current time exploring. So we want to move into that space. We are not trying to encroach into anybody's territory. We are not encroaching into tourism territory. In fact, we've had very fruitful discussion with LTDC. We have an MOU with them. We are going to partner in this whole process. Whilst they have that mandate to promote the whole country, we can contribute by doing better within the project areas.
It's about collective efforts.
Yeah, it is about collective effort.
Fascinating.
Yeah. And maybe it would be amiss for me to also say, we've also learned a lesson that we all know that construction industry has a very bad image about corruption. So we've learned our lesson, and LHDA was not spared from this. So we are saying it's something that's not going to happen again. And we are deliberate and serious about it.
Fascinating. Maybe let's just now face it out and tone it down a bit. So we usually ask our guests here some generic questions. The first one, which is, if you were to sell an economic story or Lesotho's investment case, according to an investor outside, I'm sure you meet with a lot of investors internationally. What are you most optimistic about? Just under 2 minutes or 1.5 that you can say this needs to be unlocked.
I think as a project, I would say as LHDA we are sitting on gold. It is an opportunity for investors to come along. They will have their way of benefiting, but another opportunity that we have is the fact that we are a development organization. And so we are looking at those international development agencies to come and partner with us to develop this country. LHDA could have been Lesotho Highlands Authority. There is a reason why there's a D in the development part, and it's an area that we are moving into that development part by developing the country, making sure that the lives of the people in the country, we can contribute. We are not saying we are taking the full responsibility, but we are making sure that we will make contributions that are measurable and which somebody can actually say, I was part of that. And this is where the investors come in. They also have to come in, partner with us, so that even where they sell themselves going further, they can actually say, look what we've done with our partnering with LHDA in Lesotho. Now the economy in that country is booming. And we really want to make a telling statement from that point of view.
Nice. The second question is on leadership. Your job as a leader entails management of all sorts of things. You manage stakeholders, you manage people, you manage resources, you manage almost everything. According to you, what's the working definition of leadership?
That's an interesting question. For me, there is no one size fits all. But in leadership, even though there is no one size fits all, there are still one or two requirements that need to be there. You need ethics, you need accountability, you also need to be compassionate. So for me, those are my three pillars that I work with to say I need to be held accountable, and I will also hold those who work with me accountable. And if I have the right ethics and portray that in my leadership, then I expect that the same will be contagious and filter through. The compassion part talks to the emotional intelligence. One has to have that feel for the people, care for those you are working with, and that understanding of what difficulties are they having. So as a leader, you have to adapt depending on what situation you're dealing with. In certain instances, you have to point the direction and be a bit of an autocratic person. In certain instances, you have to listen to those who you are leading to give you some sense of direction where they want you to go. This is why I in 2021, I had 30 minutes meetings with each and every one employee of this organization, just to listen to them, to say, what are your aspirations? What are the issues? What would you want us to see us address? And all of that, we've combined it, analyzed it, and many of that have filtered themselves into the strategy that we have it now. So there are several ways of doing it, but there are certain basic principles that you need to found your leadership on. Yeah,
fascinating. And how do you keep your craft sharpened? How do you continuously improve or sharpen your skill set? As in, can you share with our audience now what you are listening to, what you are reading, in when you are not at work? I don't know when you have that time.
Yeah, well, I read a lot mostly on social media. I follow Twitter a lot. You see a lot of diverse views and stuff. So right now I'm reading two books, one by Dr. Madeline Sibanda, Nuts and Bolts. Yeah, it's about innovation and entrepreneurship in Africa. And the other book is by Gail Cameron, my executive coach. It's about leadership in Africa. So it talks a lot about self-awareness, being able to emotional intelligence and the likes. Those are the books that I'm reading currently.
Fascinating. Yeah. So you're bullish on Africa. You see great potential in Africa.
Absolutely.
entrepreneurship.
Absolutely.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
And this brings us to the end of our episode. And once again, we wish to thank you greatly for squeezing us in your busy schedule and creating time to talk to us. This has been a very insightful conversation, and I hope our audience took away many lessons, and was history lessons in there. There was all sorts of perspective around what LHDA is.
Thank you, Ndadetswele, for the opportunity. I also hope that it will achieve the intended purpose. Thank you.
Fascinating. Cheers, everyone.